Have you ever really truly stopped to wonder what you're made of? Well, get ready, because we're about to go on an incredible journey. We're diving into a world that's microscopic, unbelievably complex, and literally the foundation of you and me. Today, we're taking a tour of the cell.
And to kick things off, I want you to imagine something. Just for a second. What if your entire body, everything that makes you you, was built from trillions of tiny, bustling cities? I mean, each one a miniature metropolis with its own government, power plants, factories, and transport systems, all of it working together in perfect harmony.
Because, you know what? That's not so far from the truth. You are. Every living thing on this planet is made of these fundamental units of life we call cells. Now, I know this diagram of an animal cell looks pretty complicated, but don't worry, we're going to explore it piece by piece, and we'll start with the city's command center and its borders.
You know, a lot of us probably grew up with this idea that a cell is just a simple blob, right? Kind of like a bag of jelly with a few things floating around inside. But as this quote from our source material points out, that could not be further from the truth. The reality is this world of incredible organized complexity. And that's exactly what we're about to dive into.
All right, every good tour needs a starting point. So for our first stop, we're heading to the city's administration and its borders. We're talking about the nucleus and the cell membrane. This is where all the rules are made and where the perimeter is secured. First up, let's check out the city's border control, the cell membrane. Now, this isn't some rigid wall. Think of it more like a super smart, flexible barrier. It acts like the ultimate bouncer at a club, carefully controlling exactly who and what gets in and out. Its whole job is to keep the cell's internal environment perfectly stable and safe. And then, right at the heart of the city, we find City Hall itself, the nucleus. This is the command center, the main office. And it's so important, it's enclosed by a double-layered wall called the nuclear envelope. You see all those little dots? Those are nuclear pores, and they act like security checkpoints, regulating every single thing that tries to go in or out. So, what's actually going on inside City Hall? Well, this is where the city's master blueprints, the DNA, are stored and kept safe. And get this, if you were to stretch out the DNA in just one of your cells, it would be about 2 meters long. It's incredible. From here, the nucleus reads these blueprints to control every single activity in the cell. And see that dark spot inside? That's the nucleolus. Think of it as a specialized department that manufactures the parts for the city's protein factories, which are called ribosomes.
Okay, so we've seen where the orders come from. Now let's head over to the industrial sector of our city. This is where those DNA blueprints get turned into actual products, thanks to a massive production and distribution network. Proteins are basically the workhorses of the cell. They do almost everything, and building them is like a perfectly coordinated assembly line. It all starts when instructions, a molecule called mRNA, are sent out from the nucleus. Then, little factories called ribosomes read those instructions and start building the proteins. From there, the new proteins get folded and tweaked in the endoplasmic reticulum, and finally, they're sent over to the Golgi apparatus for final packaging and shipping. Let's take a closer look at each stop. So, the endoplasmic reticulum, or just the ER for short, is this huge network of membranes, and it comes in two types. You've got the rough ER, which is like the main factory floor. It's covered in those ribosomes we mentioned, which gives it a rough look, and it specializes in proteins that are going to be exported from the cell. Then you have the smooth ER, no ribosomes here. This is more of a specialized plant, producing vital things like lipids and hormones. And, crucially, it detoxifies poisons for the whole city. Okay, so after manufacturing, all the products get shipped over to the Golgi apparatus, which is basically the city's post office or distribution center. See how those little transport bubbles, called vesicles, arrive on one side from the ER and then leave from the other? The Golgi takes these packages, tweaks them a bit more, slaps a chemical shipping label on them, and then sends them off to their final destination, whether that's inside or outside the cell. But a city isn't just government buildings and factories, right? It needs essential infrastructure to keep everything running. So now, we're going to look at the power plants, the waste management facilities, and the structural framework that holds the entire city together.
Every single city needs power, and in our cell city, that power comes from the mitochondria. These are the relentless power plants, working 24/7 to convert nutrients into something called ATP. That's the cell's main energy currency. A single, hard-working muscle cell can have thousands of these things. And that unique inner membrane, with all this folds, that massively increases the surface area for making energy. It's just a marvel of efficiency.
With all this activity, the city's bound to produce some waste. And that's where the cleanup crew comes in.
First, you have the lysosomes. These are the recycling centers, filled with powerful enzymes that break down old, worn-out parts and other debris into stuff the cell can reuse. Then you have the peroxisomes. These guys are the hazardous waste team. They specialize in neutralizing really toxic substances, like free radicals, to keep the entire city safe and clean.
So what keeps the whole cell from just collapsing into a puddle? That would be the cytoskeleton. But don't think of it as just a static scaffold. It's this amazing, dynamic network of protein fibers that gives the cell its shape, but it also acts as the city's highway system. There are these tiny motor proteins that literally walk along these tracks at incredible speeds, carrying cargo from one part of the cell to another. It's incredible.
So far, we've been touring a pretty complex, highly organized city, right? This is what's known as a eukaryotic cell. But it turns out not all cells are built this way. Let's take a second to zoom out and look at a different, much simpler model of a city.
The key difference really comes down to organization. Eukaryotic cells, the kind that make up you, me, plants, animals, they have their DNA all nice and contained within a nucleus, and they have all those specialized departments, those organelles we just toured. But prokaryotic cells, like bacteria, are way simpler. They're more like a tiny outpost with no internal rooms. Their DNA just floats around freely inside. But here's the amazing part. Despite all their differences, from the simplest little bacterium to the most complex human brain cell, all cells on Earth share four fundamental things. They all have a cell membrane as a border, they all have cytoplasm as the internal goo, they all have DNA as their genetic blueprint, and they all have ribosomes to build proteins. These are the absolute, non-negotiable essentials for life as we know it.
So, we've toured the city within. Trillions of these incredibly intricate, perfectly coordinated systems are working together right this very second to make you, well, you. It's an absolutely astounding thought. But it leaves us with one final and really crucial question to think about. If this is the complex machinery of life, what happens when just one tiny part, one power plant, one factory, one line of code breaks down?